Well, hi, and welcome to another terrific panel from the Creative Equals Rise conference. I am absolutely delighted to welcome a top-class panel of clients who have come today to talk to you about what they're looking for in 2021. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Richard Robinson. I'm the Managing Director of Oyster Catchers and also of Xeim Engage. And I'm very fortunate that I'm on the advisory board for Creative Equals as well. So without further ado, I'd like to share who we have on the panel today. We've got Jane Stiller, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of ITV. We've got Jerry Daykin, who is the Senior Media Director of GSK. We have Natalie Lamb, who is the Head of Sponsorship and Lead for Inclusion and Diversity at Philips, who's joining us from Holland. And we have Pauline Wilson. So I'm going to start, I think, with a pretty good question, which is creativity. What role does creativity play in the success of your brand? And I'm going to start, Jane, if it's okay, with yourself.
Sure, thanks, Richard, and thank you for having me. I mean, what a lovely question. What role does creativity play for our brand? And I think coming from an organisation like ITV, which is creative, in its lifeblood, it really is our competitive advantage. Our product is creativity in the programmes that we make and the content that we produce. But equally, when we look at it from a marketing point of view, we have to raise our game and make sure that the creativity of the marketing that we're producing cuts through and delivers to that content and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. So I think for us, we really do see it as competitive advantage. And, we spend a lot of time talking internally about how do we get the best talent? How do we, as a client, brief bravely and back brave work? Because in an increasingly cluttered market with the Netflix of this world coming in, creativity we really see as that thing that's going to grow our business, grow both our profits and our revenue, but also our reputation as well. So it's incredibly important to us.
Thank you. That's great. Natalie, Philips, tell us about creativity. What role does it play for you at Philips?
Yeah, it's similar. It's so important indeed to really differentiate yourself. Sorry. And also, I'm responsible for sponsoring, which also has an event part to it. So sometimes you can be very creative, actually. For example, Pride is one of our partnerships as well. And we have the boats running through the canals in Amsterdam, but we also do the parades in other countries. But there, if you want to differentiate yourself and really tell your story, that people understand it, you need creativity to really also bring it very different. But for example, also for our B2B healthcare products, it might sometimes be so hard to really resonate with the audiences for what the proposition is or the added value of our innovations. And through creativity, it's sometimes easier and more joyful to really express yourself as a brand.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And Pauline, Virgin Atlantic, what role does creativity play in the land in your world?
Thank you, Richard. And I would echo exactly similar to what Jane and Natalie has said. So creativity absolutely is going to be critical to Virgin Atlantic and also the travel industry per se. So clearly, in terms of the impact that the pandemic has had, our customers are desperate, as we all are, to go on holiday, and there's a lot of pent-up demand, but clearly there'll be a lot of tour operators, airlines trying to attract customers, and so it's really important that we do stand out. Our brand is iconic with, I'd like to say, style, innovation, that creativity. So we have a lot of legacy and a lot of kind of customer, it resonates well with customers. But it's important that we really work to get that creativity across in a playful, fun way to kind of reignite with customers who, as I say, desperate to go and have a holiday. So it's making sure that that we stand out. That cluttered market, as Jane alluded to, it's something that we need to be able to cut through. So yeah, we definitely want to work with really creative companies that can bring our brand to life, and also make sure that we are kind of reflecting the current mood of consumers as well. health and well-being and safety is of paramount importance, and we need to make sure that that comes through as well.
Great. And then lastly, Jerry, GSK creativity, how's that going?
Yeah, well, you tell me. No, I think it's super. I mean, it's been said well before. Like Natalie, I work kind of in the healthcare space. My personal job in the consumer healthcare space with like brands like Sensodyne, Volt, Panadol. I guess unlike what Jane said, they're not necessarily products that have creativity inherently in their heart. Our R&D team might disagree with that sense, but they're not, passionate, exciting, creative products by nature, but the fact that they compete, the fact that they're big brands, the fact that they stand out is in fact even more reliant on creativity as a result. We have a lot of challenges, like Sensodyne is for people with sensitive teeth. Lots of people have sensitive teeth, but they're not really bothered. They just put up with it. They just ignore it. You put a sciencey advert on the TV, and yes, that appeals to some people. Some people keep ignoring it. That's where creativity really matters. Cutting through, standing out, making people who perhaps don't think they need to pay attention to you to stop and pay attention, and then of course to remember you next time they're in the store and afterwards. So I think it's great to hear how important it is to a creative business like ITV, but it's also incredibly important to a sort of science and R&D driven business, because creativity still wins over hearts and minds.
Yeah, and I'd always say one of the most creative brands I ever worked on actually was Vicks Vapor Rub. Which if you think about that in the world of consumer healthcare, it's a huge legacy behind it. But when you actually tapped into latent insights, you could just go miles with it. But I love that. So you've been talking about sort of language you've been using it, playing it back is, creativity is bringing competitive advantage. It helps you stand out. It helps you cut through. Pauline, you use the language about it helps you reignite with customers. So really something that's at the epicenter of being able to forge the connection between the amazing brands that you work for and then the customers, whether they be B2C or B2B, you might be working for. What do you think, if I was to ask you a slightly different question, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that you face when you're developing really creative work? And that could be, Jerry, I know you're in media, or in the media aspect as well. It's like, so that could well be not just a creativity, but being able to then not only create it, but then deploy it so that the public can see it and respond to it and give you that competitive advantage that you've been looking for.
Well, I would definitely say in media, although we have a lot of science and numbers and analytics and sufficiency and things, creativity has a huge space there to play as well. You can't always compete just by spending more money or spending having more GRPs or bigger media budgets. Often you have to compete with creativity by doing unexpected things in your media, appearing in unexpected places, playing on context, being super relevant to consumers based on kind of their interests, their passion points and things. And though ultimately then one of the things we see in our research, looking at the media, creativity always comes out as the biggest driver of the effectiveness of our media. Yeah. So it's super important to making my job work. It's working really closely with a creative team, working really closely with our brands to make sure that the creative they're producing is going to deliver, and also works in the places that we're putting it, because that is when when it really works is when that comes together, and the content kind of knows where it is and is creative based on that.
And if you had to think about some of the challenges that you face then in getting to that state, whether it be internally, which would be fascinating for maybe the audience, or externally, what do you think some of the challenges are that you have to encounter when you're trying to make this great work?
Is that what? Yeah, happy to answer that as well. I think one of the biggest challenges is that they are slightly different teams, the media and the creative team. Just we try and work to bring that together. We often work with the same agency group on a lot of our brands, a lot of our media, but it is different people responsible for that, different people diving into it. Also, we're a big global business, so at times there are big global brand and creative decisions made that are quite separated from local media decisions. So I think that is a challenge in itself. And layer onto that the challenge of truly understanding consumers, avoiding stereotypes, avoiding very generic views of kind of the average consumer, and with limited amounts of creativity, trying to appeal to those different consumers. There are certainly lots of places where it can fall down.
Yeah, and Jane, I'm going to. Sorry, Natalie, I'll come to you.
No,
Natalie.
I just wanted to add to that, because indeed at a corporate company, people tend to think very mainstream and traditional, and want to stay in their comfort zone and sometimes might choose for, the generic assets in terms of the different 360 assets they would choose. And to give you a live example, again, if I use Pride, because that's one of our most creative platforms within our organization. I, together with some creatives, had the idea to create a t-shirt that would actually express our message. And we worked very close with the Pride organization, which is an NGO, of course. And this t-shirt was designed by a creative designer. So it was really beautiful, very visual. And we had the t-shirt actually as our main communicator. So all the people that were working on Pride for the whole week in Amsterdam were wearing this t-shirt, which we co-created. So I really also believe in co-creation, not only have you as a brand develop a creative concept and a campaign, but work together with either your audiences or your partner or whomever. So I really think, I hate that word, so cliche, out of the box, but really collaboration is for me the 2120 like the future, I should say, because I think you can enrich each other so much more if you collaborate, and you can come to much more creative ideas than just stick within your own rigid brand.
Yeah, excellent. So I'd like you to sort of paint a little picture, and Jane, I'm going to ask you this. So obviously, and I've obviously worked in agencies for 9 years, I assume that everyone on the client side is just waiting around for the phone to ring from the agency saying, I've got this amazing idea and we're going to pop over and show it to you. And there's nothing else going on in your life. I'd love you to give us sort of a sense of, what are you doing during the day? What are some of the things that hold you up from spending all of your time in creative meetings, that the pressures that you're put under, especially with the year that we've just been through, with the pandemic, for example? Where are you having to spend your time when obviously you could be spending it with the agency, but what's the pressure that you're actually under?
Well, I mean, apart from going for long lunches, and chilling out, I think it's a really good question, and I think our agencies ask us it a lot in terms of what are the pressures that we're facing. I think a big thing when you're running an in-house team is the running of the team, in the same way that if you're working within an agency, there's a huge amount of motivation of the team, getting clarity in terms of who's supposed to be doing what, spinning up projects, understanding the flow of those projects through the team. So I wouldn't underestimate the amount of time that is spent on, defining a vision for the team, defining the ways of working, and getting the whole, the factory working, as it were. You have big marketing teams that need to collaborate, exactly as Natalie talked about, and don't underestimate the amount of time that takes. I think then again, the opportunities, I should say, and challenges that come from internal stakeholders, which will be myriad across different organizations. But the reality is, the marketing department is one cog in a very big wheel, and how that marketing department fits into the other wheels is critical for everyone that's working within that marketing team. So a huge amount of time is spent facing outside of the marketing department into the rest of the organization to help them understand the value of marketing, why we're doing what we're doing, aligning in terms of the priorities of the things that we want to talk about, how we want to talk about them, and then to Jerry's point earlier, proving the effectiveness of what we're doing. So spending time with the finance director, with the operations director, with the commercial director, really saying, we spend millions and millions of pounds, this is what it returns for the organization, and here's how we optimize it, here's how we could do it differently. So I think that the team management, the stakeholder management, which probably feels like, surely you could do that, quickly over a long lunch. It's every day and quite a lot of the day. And I think that's where actually, particularly with creative ideas as well, some of the challenges come, because, the marketing team aren't always autonomous and able to make every decision themselves. The priorities of what is going to drive the most business value might not be defined by marketing. And similarly, the way that we then talk about those priorities, externally to the consumer, might not always be 100% in the marketing team's control either. So I think it's that recognition, I guess, from our agency partners around, like you said, those pressures that we have internally to be able to make our teams really high performing, but equally make our stakeholders, sing from the same hymn sheet as us. And that's the skill, I guess, of a good marketing team, is to make it look easy. And when I've worked out how to do it, I'll let you know.
I'm going to come to you, Pauline. How are some of the ways that what are some of the things that you would be encouraging creative talented agents to think about when they think about how large multinationals are playing in some of the work that they're creating?
Yeah, so in terms of what we are kind of spending a lot of our time, effort and energy on, is firstly is really making sure that we are engaging with our teams. So managing operationally teams of people who've been on furlough for quite a long period of time, those that come back, has been a huge task and really, really important for us to make sure that we stay connected with our teams throughout this entire period and beyond. Different ways of working. So like many of you, I'm sure on the call, getting used to this new virtual world and making sure that through that, we still stay really connected to not only our people, but also our customers as well. So we've been spending a lot of time kind of thinking about, we know we can't ever go back to how it was before, and actually taking some of the lessons, the great lessons about how we're going to work going forward. You know, if I give myself as an example, I spent, you know, the best part of 4 hours a day commuting to an office in Crawley, and actually before the pandemic hit, you know, we all would trot out the phrase that, you know, it's not possible for us all to work from home. You know, how could we possibly have our contact centre, everybody working from home? And miraculously, with what's happened through COVID, you know, so many things we thought weren't possible have become possible. And it's looking at really every part of our business to understand, you know, how can we learn from this and get better, not just operationally, but also culturally. So it's been a huge learning curve for us, and I'm sure it has been for many of you on the call. So it's as I say, key engagement with our people and our customers, making sure that we continue to build a better business going forward. And in terms of where we set our priorities, that has been also really critical. So the vision has to be clear for everybody in the business, but also, you know, what are we going to invest our time, effort and energy on? You know, we've always got a massive amount of ideas. Everybody's got great ideas, but we really have to hone ourselves onto the things that are going to make the biggest difference and that's going to be really impactful. And I think, you know, when we work with creative agencies, it's about, there's so much pressure on spending money now. And if we're going to spend that money, it's got to really be something that everybody sees as compelling and that's going to invest or if you like, kind of command us investing our precious resource on that even more so than ever. And I think that's the challenge for creative industries, is really coming back with creative ideas, but equally how they can be executed that are memorable and really going to show the value for us. So I guess you could argue it's probably not massive difference to what we would always ask, but it's just, it feels like everything's gone up a much higher level.
That's a perfect segue. I'm going to stay with you, Pauline, actually. So you're talking about return on investments, and, you know, to quote, the first time I ever heard this line was at Sainsbury's. So I think it's accredited to Sainsbury's, was to treat every pound as though it's your own. So we're at the Creative Equals Rise conference. Obviously, diversity is high on the agenda, and the diversity that you might or might not see inside agencies is a big topic of today. So when you're thinking about, you know, you're, to paraphrase what you were saying, is how you're spending your money is under extreme scrutiny, and the ideas that therefore are being bought is under harsher scrutiny than it's ever been before. How important is diversity within the talent of the agent? What role do you think that's going to play in delivering the ideas that you think are going to deliver a greater return on investment, greater firepower, the competitive advantage that Jane called it earlier? What role do you think diversity is playing within the creative teams or within the agencies to get you there?
I think it would be, even if I said it, it's not an understatement to say it's massively important. And I have, so I've been in my industry for more than 25 years, and even more so now, more critical than ever before. It is so important that we reflect the society we live in, and for too many years, so many years have we been woefully underrepresenting the diversity of our communities and our customers. You know, I'm pleased to say that we are at least having a conversation. There's still a lot more to do, but the fact that people are willing and leaning in more and more so across industries is quite heartening, but there's still a lot more we need to do. I think, you know, I am not only reminded of the importance of it, but also the next generation coming through. So I have children that are, you know, in their kind of late teens, early 20s, and they are passionate beyond belief around the fact that, you know, what we reflect, whether it's on the TV, whether it's in our ads, whether it's that it is representative of the society we live in, and I'm hugely proud that actually, you know, that level of consciousness is coming through the next generation, and kind of holding us to account. So yeah, as that famous phrase that I think I probably referred to before, from Maya Angelou, when we know better, we should do better.
Exactly. Natalie, you spoke to us earlier about, just before we came on, about a lot of the inclusivity and diversity programs that you're leading for Philips. What are the expectations that you have? So you're leading that internally and externally, but the expectations you have when you're engaging with agencies, what do you expect to find in the agencies that you're working with? You know, and that could well be across gender, it could be across ethnicity, it could be across neurodiversity, sexuality. What do you want to be working with that you think is going to give you your advantage?
Yeah, I think a little bit like what Pauline said earlier, it needs to be a reflection of society. And I have worked with quite homogeneous creative teams and account teams, unfortunately, but I've always been very vocal about it. If, you know, I just would say I would like to have a more diverse team to work with, because it's not good for the creativity and for my brief if a homogeneous team works on that, because they won't sense the need of what we want to share with our audiences. But they also need, I'm not saying that not everyone can understand and has the insights of society if they represent a certain profile. But I think once a team is diverse in not just cultural diversity, but also personalities, or maybe a disability, anything, you know, as long as it's not a cookie cutter team, then I think in the end the creative work is much better. And at times I also think it's important if someone from the team either has an experience themselves. So for example, if it's about healthcare, ideally you want someone maybe to have their own experience so that they really grasp what the objective is of the brief. Or again, if I'm talking about pride again, ideally you also want to have people from the community, because otherwise you get this stereotype, heterosexual type of vision on a message that needs to be placed in a different context. And I also sometimes like to see people that look like me that I speak to. And honestly, I think it's different in the UK, but it's just an assumption. In Holland, the marketeers and the agencies are quite Caucasian male. I have worked only one time with a creative of color, and that was a man, so not even a woman. And in terms of gender, also not many. So I think, especially in Holland, there's really a lot of room for improvement. And in terms of the transformation program that I run within in our organization, together with the help of Creative Equals, very happy with their support. Yeah, I have certain KPIs and objectives, and we've made it very measurable so that so we did audits, and I think also to make sure that we have our internal stakeholders, like Jane also mentioned earlier. I mean, I think a lot of my work also goes into stakeholder management. So when I talk to other marketeers in our organization, I really need to make sure that they understand the return of investment and the reason why, the rationale behind making sure that we enhance our representation in terms of our marketing strategy and assets, that you also connect to so many more audiences that you currently not do. And it's for me, not only the marketing aspect of it, but it's also how we innovate our products and solutions, because we also tend to work with too much homogeneous teams on our products and solutions. But if you already at the start of the chain, so for example, develop products and solutions in a healthcare space, in this case, that really cater to a wider, diverse audience, then you don't even need to worry about the marketing part of it anymore, because then the conversation or what you want to share about your product and solution already caters to a wider audience. So then your marketing around that product or solution becomes much more natural and easy and a reflection of society. So actually, I started with the end part being the marketing part of the chain. And now I actually suggested that I can focus more on the first part, which is development and creation of our products and solutions, and also the people that work around that. Because when we start more at that chain stars, I don't know if I say that correctly in English, but
you did.
So, yeah, then everything will fall, automatically to a great end. So that's my vision on how we can improve. And it's the same for agencies, if they are more diverse in any type of context, then it doesn't need to be a topic anymore of discussion. Then it becomes natural.
Agreed. Jane, as a senior marketer, when agencies or creative resources, can be in-house, external, when you're having ideas presented to you, do you feel that you get it, you can sense as a senior marketer, sort of the hands that it's gone through? Do you have a sense when you're looking at work? It's not, did it come from a man or did it come from women, but did it come from, as Natalie would say, from a homogeneous team, where maybe everybody looks and sounds like I do, for example, that is creating the work? Do you have a sense when you're getting work presented to you that's just come from people who might think and act and be as one?
Yeah, I think there's probably two points I'd make on this. One, I think it tends to be the opposite way around. When you see really, really good work, and we're lucky that we have amazing creative teams, both in-house and with our external agency. When you see amazing work and you kind of trace it back, I think you tend to find that the team that had worked on it have had, exactly like Natalie said, diversity within them. So I think rather than recognizing the work and saying, oh, it has been or hasn't been a diverse team, I think tends to be when there's a good idea and you trace it back, there has been diversity at the core of that team. I think the other bit is, I guess, as senior marketeers and clients, recognizing our bias as well, in that we like to buy ideas that speak to us. And I think it was Jerry who was making the point earlier of how well do we understand our consumers and our customers, and in our case our viewers, and kind of to Pauline's point earlier, how much are we reflecting society as it is? And I think as senior marketers, we have a responsibility to recognize, we are in a massive minority in terms of, most of us live in central London, most of us earn a certain amount of money, if I speak for myself, I'm a white woman, so my lens on the world is of a certain type, and I have to recognize that bias when I'm looking at work and take myself out of that and look at the diversity across the British population and say, this is who I'm commissioning work for, not whether I like it or I don't like it. And I think that's one of the big bits as marketeers. We've got a responsibility, if we're going to move creativity in the UK but globally as well on, we have to recognize that bias that's within ourselves.
Now, if I could, I'm going to ask you a question about, because I've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions for the audience, which they always get quite excited about, or in previous years they have, when we've been doing this in real life. But if I was to get you to think about, what's something that you would like an agency to help you with, but you don't have the time or the money to actually get around to briefing the agent, to give an idea, what's the kind of problem that you've got on your desk at the moment you just love someone to solve for you, if they wanted to? Jane, I'm going to stay with you, if I may. So what's a problem that you've got that you're kind of sitting there going, oh, I'd love to get somebody to do this, but I just haven't got around to even writing a brief or thinking about it, to give you a sense of where the innovation might be coming from for the future?
This is probably a slightly boring answer, but I would actually say helping us get to better briefs. I mean, it's our responsibility.
That's a great answer.
It's our responsibility as marketeers to write really good briefs. But to my conversation earlier, we get pulled in a million and one different directions, and writing brave briefs that inspire brave work and getting the consumer, the viewer, the customer, whatever you want to call them, at the heart of that brief, I think is really important. And having agency partners who hold us to account, but also help us. And what I mean by that is, if the brief's crap, don't accept it, basically.
Okay.
And hold us to account more, I would say.
Jerry, what would you like some help with?
I'd probably say there's a lot of talk about like data, personalization, targeting at the moment, and huge opportunities there in better reaching, different consumers with different messages and things. But all too often, I think we lose creativity when we go down that route. We get too tied down by data and targeting, or the creative execution just becomes, wow, I did some personalization. I think there's still some great work to be done in our industry in cracking what is, a brilliant, powerful, creative idea, which is made better by personalization, not just a brief that is, I want some personalization, drive it for me. We've seen bits of that. We've done some good things, but I think there's a lot more to be done there.
Perfect. Pauline, what would you like help with?
I think Shane's initial comment is probably along the lines of what I'd say, helping us do much better briefs. I think also in terms of an execution of an idea, as much as we want to make sure that it speaks to our audience, it resonates, it's compelling, it stands out, and equally it reflects kind of the community we serve. I think where we could do a better job is for it to come across as really genuine and authentic. Often I see a lot of work where it feels as though it's been a real tick box exercise, and they have crammed every possible type of diversity in, and that has had quite the opposite effect. So I think that would be an interesting problem to solve.
Nice. Okay, and then Natalie, same question for yourself.
Yeah, I actually have a little bit of the similar challenge as Pauline said. Like in Holland as well, I think we did such a step up in terms of diversity reflection in the advertising. But now when I watch TV and I look at all the commercials, it was almost over the top. And actually my own kids who are multiracial say the same, like, Mama, it's like, it doesn't feel real anymore. It's not authentic. But although I'm working so much in that space, I also don't know what would be the real solution. And indeed, because also I need to support our internal teams to have campaigns that reflect these criteria. Like, how can you do it? Like, what is the magic? Do you have a magic wand to explain and help us how to do so? And I really believe in focus groups. So yeah, that would be one of my questions. But in terms of working together, I still feel that we work too much conservative with our agencies. Well, yeah. I should talk for myself, because that's how I feel, that we work too conservative, too much as the client, the agency, give and get.
Perfect, that's great. And then final question before we take some questions from the audience. One piece of advice, so it's a quick short answer. One piece of advice you would give to an up-and-coming creative director in an agency to just enable them to turbocharge their career. What would be your one bit of advice as a senior client to say, just do a bit more of this and it's all going to be okay? Jane, you're smiling. I might come to you first.
Was a tough question.
Yeah.
I would say build your perspective.
Great.
So, like we talked about before, spend time with people who are not like you, spend time on projects that aren't necessarily within your comfort zone, travel to places that are different and unexpected, and build a great perspective so that you can feed that diversity and that perspective into your creative work.
Excellent. Natalie, what would be your piece of advice you'd give to
challenge your clients. I think we're so anti-risque, or people are all so scared. I think we should allow for making courageous decisions, and I think that's what stops us, because the agency doesn't want to lose the client or the marketeer just thinks about their KPIs instead of out of the box, more creative type of work.
Jerry, what would your advice be?
I would say don't be afraid of diversity, and I'd probably aim that in particularly at some of the sort of the white straight men working in the industry. I think sometimes this whole topic can be terrifying and scary. No one is saying that as a man you can't make great advertising for women or Black people or LGBT people or anything, all we're saying is that, you know, all of our lives are enriched when we bounce ideas of other people, when we involve other people, when we take in different perspectives.
Fully agreed. Pauline?
Wow, I think they're all really good words of advice, and I would echo all of that. Yeah, I think I'd sum it up by saying be really curiously inclusive. So be curious to understand about others. Be brave, be fearless. I know there's not one word. Be brave, be fearless, and be human, really. Yeah. Because, yeah, we as much as we talk about diversity, there is more that unites us, actually, than there is that divides us.